On today's episode of The Talking Beat, our host, Terry Wallow-Strauss, is joined by detectives John Richardson and Aaron Rizzo to talk about the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. First, a warning. This podcast contains information about sensitive topics that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. In this show, detectives discuss investigating child predators, including those who possess child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, and how they work with NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Detectives will also highlight the most popular trend in cyber crimes against children, a crime called sextortion. Our detectives have seen a significant increase in children and teens being threatened and coerced into sending explicit images online.
As soon as that picture gets sent, immediately the tone changes of these chat messages and it becomes threatening and dangerous, and they will send screenshots of the victim's picture in like a text thread to go out to all their friends if they don't send money immediately.
We'll outline what predators do to seek victims and give teens and their parents advice for seeking help if this crime has occurred.
Welcome and thanks for joining us today. I'm here today with Detective Aaron Rizzo and Detective John Richardson of our Internet Crimes Against Children unit. Aaron, thanks for joining us today. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what the unit does?
Sure. So I'm a member of the Internet Crimes Against Children unit. I've been there since 2021. The unit is comprised right now of 5 investigators and an analyst, and we investigate online child exploitation as members of a state task force, and 4 of us are members of a federal task force as well. So this involves cases of people uploading child sexual abuse material that was previously referred to as child pornography within the city of Portland. This also involves children that are being abused online by unknown offenders, and their parents are making police reports with the Portland police, and involves the creation, unfortunately, of child sexual abuse material that is occurring within the home. So we investigate cases kind of across that spectrum.
And John, how many cases are we talking about? How many cases do you guys receive, and how many do you actually investigate?
That number is kind of all over the place. So I'll just give you a background real quick about typically what we investigate are cyber tips. And so there's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's a nonprofit, and they are kind of the triage spot for these tips. There's a federal law that requires that electronic service providers notify NCMEC when they believe that abuse is occurring on their platform. So they notify NCMEC, and NCMEC will they have their employees there that look at the case, and they try to figure out where it came from, and then they'll route that cyber tip. In our case, it's Oregon Department of Justice, and they'll say, hey, we think that this tip came from Portland, Oregon. So then they give it to us. The actual number is kind of difficult. In some years, we've gotten as many as 1,000. Unfortunately, a small amount of those are getting investigated. We're trying to do as many as we can, but it's just we got a lot of work and not a lot of people that are working on it. So I would say, I don't know, Aaron, maybe like 20% of cases that are actually getting detectives going to houses.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of these cases, they're very complicated. The legal lift on them can be heavy, so subpoenas have to be written, search warrants have to be written just to even identify who the suspect is in these cases. And even subsequent to that, once a case even resolves, we could have terabytes of data to go through to identify child sexual abuse material if there's additional victims. So the average case that involves a search warrant could take 80 to 100 hours of investigative work on them.
And sometimes, again, because we got to triage cases, our analyst does a good job of looking at every case to say that, like, we think there might be kids in the home that are, could potentially being abused. We definitely do triage on all the cases that we get sent to us. But as far as the cases being worked, sometimes the leads in the cases aren't great. But there's a lot of factors that kind of goes into what makes those cases rise to the top for us to actually use our time on. So like sometimes people will generate multiple cyber tips, and those are all linked up. And so again, we just kind of look at the totality of the circumstances. But I mean, if we had more investigators, we could probably be making a lot more arrests and contacting a lot more people. But unfortunately, we're just not there right now.
So tell me what your day looks like. Aaron, what is involved in investigating these cases?
We receive our cyber tips almost every single day. We can get 1 to 2 tips. I think we've received 2 or 3 today. So I know that our analyst is going through those cyber tips, trying to identify suspects. So I know that there's a constant influx of work coming in. John and I will kind of plan out our day if there's somebody we want to contact. So some of these cases, there may not be a whole lot of information beyond maybe an address. So John and I will go out to address. We call them a knock and talk and try to make contact with someone. Oftentimes we can get a confession, we take phones, and we can start our criminal investigation that way. Other cases, we'll have, like John was talking about, we have triage. So say a case comes in where we identify the suspect, and the suspect has 2 things going for him. They are in a position of power and they have access to children. So if those 2 events come together at a cyber tip, that will kind of, everything else will slow down, and then we'll bring all investigators in to start working a case like that because there is an immediate risk of danger to a child.
Unfortunately, people that are in positions of power around kids, they kind of seek out those jobs. Our analyst does a really good job of when he does a triage of finding out, you know, if they are in a position of power, if they have access to children, so that, I mean, those are all things that we take into account when we try to figure out how we're going to use our resources.
I think for the most part, our caseload's pretty heavy. I think all of us carry anywhere from probably 12 to 18 cases that are active and working in various stages. So, like currently, I have a case where I wrote a 51-page search warrant to search a bunch of devices that we seized during a residential search warrant. And now I know that it will take me dozens of hours to go through all the data. But I also have cases in the infancy stage that still need active workup. So being able to kind of manage my time, what's important. My suspect in the search warrant is, I'm not concerned about him anymore, but I have cases where I don't know where the suspect is. I don't know if the suspect's continuing to abuse a child. So working with John and the team to quickly identify these people and make contact with them as quick as possible is always the goal.
Yeah, it's kind of weird work because, like you said, we do a lot of knock and talk. So sometimes we have the cyber tip and we go knock on the door and we're able to get a confession and get the device, and the case is just kind of wrapped up right there. But then sometimes these cases lead into really long, like these investigations take a really long time because you have to write warrants to Google, and then you have to wait for Google to respond to the legal requests, and then you got to go through the data that comes back from Google, and then you have to write residential search warrants. And it just, I mean, when I first came to the unit, that's how every case was worked, and there were cases that took over a year to get through that. So it's hard. Like our daily thing is, you know, I want to go, my goal is to always go out to as many homes as possible, but sometimes that turns into a case that gets a lot of attention, and I've got 2,000 pages of chat messages to go through, and that's really time consuming. So it's kind of all over the place, I would say, throughout the year. But.
Well, John, you actually came to us and wanted to do this podcast, and we really appreciate that because there was one main focus that you really wanted to talk about, a trend that's kind of going around that you wanted kids and their parents and families to be aware of.
Yeah, so I wanted to educate people a little bit on the sextortion cases. It's something that we get a lot of. It's also one that's hard to investigate because a lot of the suspects in these cases are outside of the country, and they're I would say that the trend is definitely involving teenage boys. It seems like a lot who are, sometimes they don't come forward. But what they'll do is they go online and they meet somebody, and then they start sending pictures of themselves to that person, and those people use that picture to either leverage for more pictures or money. And so I figured we could talk to people about it and hopefully educate kids and parents. Number one, prevent that from happening, or maybe do our best to put kids in situations where they're not going to be doing that, but also kind of what to do if that happens to them, and how to respond.
Yeah, we've seen this increase, especially probably in the last 3 years, of children, specifically teenage boys, being targeted by outside of the United States actors. And what they're doing is they're creating accounts with girls approximately the same age as these boys, and they're going on these online platforms, and they're friending multiple people at the same time, all within these friend groups. And again, it's extortion for money. It could be extortion for additional images. But what we are seeing across the board is the effect on mental health for these teenagers. We're seeing high suicidality rates. They're afraid to talk to it, afraid to bring it up. And I think what John and I would like to bring forward is that when these things happen, if you know somebody that this is happening to, like, you can call and make a police report. John and I will come out. We come out in plain clothes. We just kind of want to know what's going on and see if we can identify somebody. There have been cases that have been resolved outside the United States with the FBI, and there are tools to kind of deal with this. But it's pervasive. It could be within a friend group of multiple people within the same friend group being targeted, and they're not talking to each other, so they don't even know that's occurring.
Like I said before, they're hard to investigate because the people are outside of the country, and so I really think that like our focus should be on just making sure that it never happens. But I mean, Aaron's right. It's like it's a complicated it's a complicated thing because these kids do have mental health issues. A lot of them because they're, like you said, the friend groups. They'll get the image and then they'll threaten to send it to all their friends or their kids and their other kids in their circle. It's just, it's a mess.
So if I'm a kid listening to this right now, what advice would you give me?
Number one, I think this is pretty obvious, but don't send naked pictures of yourself to anybody in the internet. It doesn't matter if you think that they're safe or they're the same age or, these people are going to use images that they're going to think the other person finds attractive. And so, number one, you shouldn't be kids should never be taking pictures of themselves, even if they're sending it to somebody they know, because relationships break up and people send those to other people. And once they're out on the internet, it just gets duplicated over and over and over again. You could be letting the genie out of the bottle, and it's impossible to get it back in. So
we've seen cases where these pictures get shared. The person trusts them because the victim may see that, oh, this person is friends with my friends. And the suspect in this case has done enough research to say they go to maybe a local high school. And so they do a very good job of building trust and appearing to be a real person here in Portland, Oregon. And at the end of the day, as soon as that picture gets sent, immediately the tone changes of these chat messages and it becomes threatening and dangerous. And they will send screenshots of the victim's picture in like a text thread to go out to all their friends if they don't send money immediately. Sometimes they will follow through on these threats. Sometimes they won't, but we're trying to educate just to avoid this occurring at all.
We've all done stupid things. I as a mother, I told my kids, listen, I was young. I did things I regret. So if you've done this, if you're a kid, what do you want to tell them right now, and how to help them fix it, I guess?
I think the sooner you act, the better. It's sad. We've had this happen to kids, and the kids are, getting on their Apple Pay or their Cash App or whatever and sending people money because they don't want their parents to know. But I think you definitely need to go talk to your parents immediately. But also, I talked about the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children earlier. So the way that NCMEC does stuff is they when a cyber tip's made, they can reach out to the ISP, and the ESP, the electronic service provider, is required to preserve data. So if they do act fast, and you can make a cyber tip by calling the phone number or doing it online. NCMEC can actually go through. So let's say this happened on their Instagram account or their Snapchat account. They can go preserve all that data, and because a lot of these companies will only hold on to data for so long. And once the data is preserved, then we can go through when we do our criminal investigation. We have stuff to work with. If people wait too long to report it, that data is going to be gone. We're not going to have anything. So you do need to tell somebody. I think you do need to make a police report or a cyber tip to NCMEC, and we can do everything we can to stop that image from being spread. There's also other things that NCMEC can do. So whenever there's child sexual abuse material that's been identified, they'll attach a way of identifying it. So Google will scan for a hash value if they know that image or the video is CSAM. And if kids are honest and they say, hey, this is the picture that got out, we can contact NCMEC and say, if you ever see this picture on your platform that is child sexual abuse material, and the people that are exchanging it, in a year or so that have gotten their hands on it, we can identify when that's happening and we can make criminal cases on those.
Yeah, I can only imagine the fear and panic somebody feels like that, but it's really getting them to understand they're a victim in the end, correct?
Yeah, I think that these kids feel like they screwed up, and because they feel like they screwed up, they don't want to tell anybody about it or get in trouble. But the reality is they've been groomed and they're being victimized by somebody. Like Aaron said, they do such a good job of getting into the friend circles and actually looking like a real person from a neighboring school or an out-of-state school that's friend of so and so. I mean, we hear that so often in these cases to where it's like, oh, well, I thought they were safe because they were, Billy's friend and also friend with, somebody else. And so I thought they were safe. They do a really good job of tricking you. And so I would say that you haven't done anything wrong. I mean, you've made a mistake, but it's not your fault. You've been groomed to do this, and we need to do everything we can to catch the people that are doing it.
So if I'm a parent listening to this, what advice do you have for me?
I would definitely do a good job of communicating with your kids and let them know. First, I would educate them on, what's going to happen if they send their picture to somebody. I mean, like I said, don't even send your picture to people that you trust. We've had cases where, girlfriend sends pictures when she's 15 to boyfriend, and then boyfriend becomes an adult and he starts selling those pictures online. So when you're taking those pictures, they could come back to haunt you years down the road. So I would educate kids kind of on the reality of that, but then also let your kid know that if they are if somebody is coming after them online and trying to extort them, that they need to come forward. And I would do everything I can to your kid's paying the price for it in that moment, right? It's humiliating. They're probably really depressed. And so I probably wouldn't punish them. I would probably let them know that we're going to report this and do it the right way, because I just kind of feel like they're already being punished enough. So.
Yeah, I think having some of the things that these parents can look out for is changes in behavior from the children, them using their phones in much more secure ways. So one of the things that John and I look at when we talk to people is most people have either an Android device or an Apple phone, and they come with built-in messenger platforms on them that are very secure and they work great. There's no issues with them. But when we start seeing phones of victims or suspects where there's additional chat platforms on there, that raises red flags to me, because why would you need something like that? So if parents are seeing their kids with Telegram or Signal or Kik, there's a whole host of chat platforms up there, I think that's a good indicator to start asking some additional questions. It's up to the parents of how they want to police devices in their home. I always think that it's a good thing for no kid to have phones in their room after they go to bed. And then parents need to be able to have open access to these devices. I understand there are privacy issues that the child wants, but I think that there needs to be ground rules for if they're communicating with an adult, if pictures are being sent, because at this point now things can get out of control, and we just don't want to see children then being afraid to bring it back to their parents. So them being able to openly talk to their parents about what's going on in their life, if something has happened, and what the next steps to take. John and I have sat at a lot of dinner tables and had these discussions with families and their children, and kind of the steps to take going forward to keep them safe.
Yeah, there's no reason for a kid, I think, to have encrypted chat on their phone. And so I would do a good job of educating yourself. If you see an app on your kid's phone that you're not familiar with, looking into it and finding out if it's anything that's encrypted or designed to hide data from other people seeing it. There's that's a big warning sign to me. So
these are horrific crimes, and you guys deal with a lot. How do you do this every day?
Lots of therapy.
Yeah. I think one of the benefits to being in the unit that we've been in, so John and I have been partners for years now, is you do form a camaraderie with the people you work with, and that helps. And having good supervisors who recognize the trauma associated with our position. So like we have wellness time as we need it, and we can talk about it, and we can meet with our supervisors. And if we need to take a break, we can take a break. But being able to work with people in this hemisphere together helps a lot because everybody else understands. So we've gone to large scale conferences, and you do feel like you're a part of a team because the content is really horrible, and the things we deal with have like long lasting traumatic effects. But being able to work with people that you can talk with it about, and kind of process it helps just a ton. So it's just kind of the people you work with.
Yeah, it is. I will say that like the mental health is pretty difficult. It's difficult for the stuff that we have to see, but I mean, also like being shorthanded and knowing that we can't investigate every case. I mean, we'll go knock on a door sometimes and we don't think that there's any risk or there's kids, and we go knock on the door and we find out there's children in the house. And so, like I said earlier, it's like we don't ever really know a lot of times what we're walking into or the situation that we're getting. And Aaron and me have both prevented kids from being abused because we've gotten involved and we can tell that there was a plan to abuse a kid. And so that's kind of what keeps us going. People ask me like, how long are you going to do that for? Because it's got to be hard. But on the other hand, I don't know that there's a lot of, police work is, with some other crimes, you can kind of, I'm not justifying the crime, but like, two parties, in assault, maybe somebody was threatening to hurt somebody else and somebody went a little too far. In these cases, like there's no justification for it. And I also think 100% of these cases need to be investigated before any other kids are victimized. So that's kind of what keeps us going, I think. I know that like sometimes I could slow down and try to take a break, but it is something that I always struggle that like maybe I'm sitting back and I need to work harder and get to more of these cases because I don't know what is going to be behind that door when I go knock on it.
So the rewards are high. If you save one kid, and it must feel really good when you're able to make an arrest of somebody that's victimized a child. I can't even imagine.
It's invigorating. It is, it gives you energy to go do the next case. So they're hard, but they're worth it. I mean, I never wanted to do this type of work. I just kind of fell into it as an officer to help with the investigations, and it has become my passion just because I just don't know that there's other places where you can make this type of impact.
I agree. I think children always hold a safe place in our society, and then the cases that John and I get where there are children involved and we're able to prevent harm or stop harm is invigorating. It does give you that like sense to push on to the next one and push on to the next one, because we don't know what we're facing when we go to these doors. We don't know if we're interrupting something or if there was plans made to abuse a child that we're interrupting. We can just hope that when we get these cyber tips and we know that these people are looking at child sexual abuse material, that this is the smoke that we can investigate before there is a hands-on offense, which is always the ultimate goal. And I think we do a really good job of it. It has grown exponentially. There's been, I think, a 600% increase in cyber tips in the last 5 years. Nationwide, we're at over 30 million. And it's just such an uphill battle. But we try to work with our local and state and federal partners and investigate these crimes to the best of our ability. Just wish we had more ability to.
I know that there's some people that we've contacted have been like, well, I'm just looking at these things and I'm not actually harming a kid. But I mean, a study showed that, 70 to 80% of people that are exchanging CSAM have had hands-on offenses before. And so I think that's really what pushes us to make sure that we do as much as we can.
Yeah, and I want to make that point too. Like if you find this on like your partner's phone or your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or, you happen to come across material, to call you guys to report it, because it may not be, it may be a lot wider than they're admitting or that you even think it is.
It definitely will be a lot more.
Often, some of the best cases that we've had in the last few years are cases that involve a partner discovering this kind of content. Sometimes it's them discovering that maybe their child is being abused. Sometimes it's that this
last week.
and or there's child sexual abuse material. And the key with these cases is to make sure that you're safe and call 911. And once the patrol gets there, they'll know. We go and talk to all the patrol officers in the city, and they should know to call us, and we'll come out and we'll start our investigation from there. But we had a case several years ago where somebody discovered something on one of my cases, and there ended up being 65,000 images that were located after a search warrant. So oftentimes what we're seeing is the iceberg. We're just seeing the very, very top. Even during interviews where they confess, they try to downplay and minimize what they've done. But once we start searching devices, we find out that it is a much bigger problem, and they are often collecting large amounts of CSAM or in the early processes of wanting, maybe taking pictures of children out in public and things like that, where they're at the beginning stages of wanting to abuse.
Well, thanks for being here today, guys, and thanks for everything you do.
Thank you. Thanks.
If you need help and are in immediate danger, call 911. If you would like to make a tip, you can file a report with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. 24-hour call center is 1-800-843-5678 or report.cybertip.org. Do you have a question for the Talking Beat? Send us an email at talkingbeat@police.portlandoregon.gov or give us a call at 971-339-8868. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends. And for more episodes, visit our website, portland.gov/police/podcast.